Who are you? Why are you here? Caleb Thornton's voice cracked, sharp with suspicion, as he stood frozen before his brother Nathan's grave in the golden haze of a New York autumn. The 34-year-old tech millionaire, his blonde hair catching the breeze, eyes a piercing blue, had come to mourn in solitude. Yet there, kneeling by the tombstone, was Aisha Carter, a radiant black flight attendant, her wavy black hair cascading down, her warm brown eyes glistening with tears as she held a 6-year-old boy, Liam, whose blue eyes mirrored Nathan's. Their presence stirred a restless curiosity in Caleb, those familiar eyes hinting at a buried truth. This moment would unravel a secret that shatters his world, forging an unexpected family from the ashes of betrayal. If this grips you, hit subscribe, share where you're watching from, and stay for a tale that redefines love and legacy. The autumn air hung heavy over the Oakwood Cemetery in upstate New York, where golden leaves drifted like forgotten promises across the weathered gravestones. Caleb Thornton stood motionless, his tall frame cutting a solitary silhouette against the fading light. At 34, the tech millionaire, with his neatly trimmed blonde hair and piercing blue eyes, carried the weight of a man who had conquered boardrooms but never his own heart. His clean-shaven jaw tightened as he traced the engraved name on the cold marble before him, Nathan Thornton. 5 years had passed since the plane crash stole his older brother, yet the grief remained a sharp blade, slicing through the polished veneer of his success. Today he had come seeking solitude, a rare moment to lay a single white rose at Nathan's grave and whisper regrets to the wind. The crunch of leaves beneath his polished loafers was the only sound until a soft, anguished sob pierced the stillness. Caleb's head snapped up, his blue eyes narrowing. There, kneeling before Nathan's tombstone, was a woman he didn't know. Her radiant brown skin glowed under the autumn sun, her long, wavy black hair spilling over her shoulders like a cascade of midnight. She wore a simple navy blazer, the kind a flight attendant might don, its crisp lines clinging to her slender frame. In her arms, she cradled a boy, no older than 6, his tousled brown hair catching the light, his small hands clutching her tightly. The boy's face was buried in her shoulder, but when he turned, Caleb's breath caught. Those eyes, vivid blue, luminous as sapphires, were a haunting echo of Nathan's. "Who are you? Why are you here?" Caleb's voice cracked, sharp with suspicion, trembling with a curiosity he couldn't suppress. He stepped forward, the rose slipping slightly in his grip, his heart pounding against the tailored fabric of his charcoal suit. The woman's head jerked up, her brown eyes glistening with tears, meeting his with a quiet dignity that unsettled him. She rose slowly, adjusting the boy in her arms, her movements deliberate, as if shielding him from Caleb's scrutiny. The boy peeked out, his blue eyes locking with Caleb's, and for a moment, the world seemed to tilt. Those eyes carried a weight Caleb couldn't name, a riddle wrapped in their innocent gaze. "I'm Aisha Carter," she said, her voice soft but steady, wiping a tear with the back of her hand. "And this is Liam." She offered no further explanation, her lips pressing into a thin line as she held Caleb's stare with an unflinching resolve. Despite the sorrow etched into her features, there was a warmth in her presence, a radiant energy that seemed to defy the cemetery's gloom. Caleb's jaw tightened, his handsome features hardening into the mask he wore during high-stakes negotiations. The cold pragmatism of a CEO surged within him, dismissing the scene as an intrusion on his private grief. "This is a family matter," he said, his tone clipped, the words slicing through the crisp air. "You shouldn't be here." Yet even as he spoke, a flicker of doubt crept in. Liam's eyes, those uncanny blue orbs, held a story he couldn't decipher, tugging at a buried instinct he couldn't ignore. Aisha's gaze didn't waver. "I come here every year," she replied, her voice trembling slightly, but laced with a strength that surprised him. "It's important to us." She adjusted Liam, his small frame nestling closer, and Caleb noticed the way her hands trembled as they brushed the boy's hair, a gesture both tender and protective. The cemetery's somber atmosphere seemed to close in, the distant caw of a crow adding to the tension. Caleb's mind raced, piecing together fragments of a puzzle he hadn't known existed. Who was this woman with her radiant kindness despite her tears. Why did she bring a child, this child with eyes that seemed to pierce through the years to Nathan's memory? The rose in his hand felt heavy, a symbol of his grief now tainted by this unexpected encounter. Aisha's presence, her quiet resilience, stirred something in him. Anger, yes, but also a curiosity that burned brighter with each passing second. He studied her, noting the way her wavy hair caught the fading light, the way her eyes, though red-rimmed, sparkled with a defiance that belied her gentle demeanor. She was beautiful, not in the polished way of the women who flocked to his galas, but in a raw, unyielding way that made him feel exposed. Liam's gaze darted between them, his small hand clutching Aisha's sleeve, and Caleb felt a pang of something unfamiliar. Guilt, perhaps, for the harshness in his tone. "I didn't mean to disturb you," Aisha said, her voice softer now, almost apologetic, yet still carrying that unshakable warmth. "We'll go." She turned, guiding Liam down the gravel path, her blazer swaying with her steady steps. Caleb watched them, his blue eyes fixed on the boy's retreating figure, those blue eyes lingering in his mind like a ghost. He wanted to call out, to demand answers, but the words caught in his throat. The weight of Nathan's absence pressed harder now, mingling with the mystery of Liam's presence. Without a word, Caleb turned, his long strides carrying him back toward his sleek black Mercedes parked at the cemetery's edge. The rose lay forgotten on the ground, its petals curling in the autumn breeze. Inside the car, his fingers drummed against the steering wheel, a restless habit born of a mind that never stopped calculating. He glanced back at the distant figures, Aisha's silhouette still bent over the grave, Liam's small form a shadow against the stone. A decision took root, dark and calculated. He would find out who they were, why they were here, and what those blue eyes meant. As he drove away, the image of Liam's gaze haunted him, a silent promise of revelations to come. This encounter, born in the shadow of Nathan's grave, was no mere coincidence. It was the first crack in the foundation of Caleb's carefully constructed world, a crack that threatened to unravel everything he thought he knew about his brother, his family, and himself. The autumn leaves swirled behind him, whispering secrets he wasn't ready to hear, but couldn't ignore. The hum of Manhattan's skyline pulsed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Caleb Thornton's sleek office, a fortress of glass and steel that mirrored the cold precision of his life. At 34, the tech millionaire sat rigid behind his polished mahogany desk, his blonde hair slightly mussed from restless fingers, his blue eyes fixed on the small evidence bag in his hand. Inside, a single strand of Liam's brown hair glinted under the fluorescent light, a fragile key to a mystery that had haunted him since the cemetery. 2 days had passed since he'd seen Aisha Carter and the boy with Nathan's eyes, and the memory of those sapphire orbs burned in his mind, stirring a storm of doubt and curiosity. Caleb, who had built an empire on control, felt it slipping, replaced by an ache he couldn't name. The encounter at Oakwood Cemetery had left him rattled. Aisha's radiant warmth, her wavy black hair framing tear-streaked cheeks, and Liam's uncanny resemblance to Nathan had cracked the armor of his solitude. He'd returned to the cemetery the following evening, under the guise of another visit, his charcoal suit replaced with a casual navy sweater to soften his imposing presence. Aisha was there again, her navy blazer pristine, her brown eyes wary but kind as she watched Liam kick leaves near Nathan's grave. Caleb had approached with feigned nonchalance, his heart pounding as he exchanged small talk, his fingers deftly catching the stray hair from Liam's hoodie as the boy brushed past. Aisha's gaze had flickered with suspicion, but she'd said nothing, her protective stance unwavering. Now, in the sterile silence of his office, Caleb's fingers trembled as he handed the bag to a discreet lab technician, a contact from his corporate dealings. "Rush it," he'd said, his voice low, edged with a desperation he barely recognized. The technician nodded, vanishing with the sample, leaving Caleb alone with his thoughts. He paced, his clean-shaven jaw tight, his blue eyes darting to the city lights below. Nathan's death 5 years ago had been a wound he'd buried beneath ambition, but Liam's eyes had ripped it open. Was this boy his nephew? The thought was both a lifeline and a threat, a connection to Nathan that could unravel the Thornton legacy he'd sworn to protect. The weight was agonizing. Caleb sank into his leather chair, his broad shoulders slumping as memories of Nathan flooded him. His brother's easy laugh, the way his blue eyes sparkled when he spoke of dreams beyond their family's wealth. Nathan had been the dreamer, Caleb the pragmatist, and their mother Eleanor had favored Caleb's ruthless drive. But now those eyes in Liam's innocent face suggested Nathan had kept secrets, a life Caleb had never known. The possibility gnawed at him, stirring a guilt he couldn't shake. Had he failed his brother by not knowing, by not asking? His phone buzzed, snapping him back. The lab's email glowed on the screen, the subject line stark. DNA results. Caleb's heart thudded, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. He clicked, and the words hit like a physical blow. 99.09% match. Liam Carter is a direct blood relative of Nathan Thornton. The room spun, the city lights blurring as Caleb's breath caught. His nephew. Liam was Nathan's son. The certainty was a thunderclap, shattering the walls of his carefully ordered world. Joy flickered briefly. A piece of Nathan lived on, but it was quickly drowned by a surge of anger. Who was Aisha to keep this secret? Why had Nathan hidden a child? Caleb's hands clenched, the paper crumpling in his fist. His blue eyes darkened, the cold pragmatism of a CEO resurfacing. He stormed to the window, staring at the glittering city he'd conquered, now feeling like a hollow prize. Liam's existence was a claim, a challenge to the Thornton name. Aisha, with her gentle strength and radiant kindness, suddenly seemed a threat. A woman who held the key to a truth he wasn't ready to face. Yet her face lingered in his mind, her brown eyes sparkling with resolve despite her tears, her warmth defying the coldness of his suspicion. He sank back into his chair, his navy sweater creasing as he leaned forward, head in hands. The memory of Aisha's voice, soft but firm, "It's important to us," echoed, clashing with his instinct to control the narrative. She wasn't just an intruder, she was a guardian, fiercely protective of Liam. Caleb's heart twisted, caught between admiration and distrust. He imagined confronting her, demanding answers, but the image of Liam's blue eyes stopped him. Those eyes weren't just Nathan's. They were a mirror, reflecting a part of Caleb he'd buried, the part that longed for family, for connection. The office clock ticked, each second amplifying his turmoil. He reached for his phone, tempted to call his mother Eleanor, whose icy demeanor had shaped their family's legacy. But something held him back. If Liam was Nathan's son, why had Eleanor never spoken of him? The question lodged in his chest, a seed of doubt about the woman who'd raised him. Caleb's fingers traced the edge of his desk, a habit born of restless thought, as he wrestled with his next move. He could hire investigators, dig into Aisha's life, but the thought felt like a betrayal, not of her, but of the boy who carried Nathan's eyes. As dawn crept over Manhattan, painting the skyline in hues of gold, Caleb stood, his broad frame silhouetted against the glass. The DNA results lay heavy in his pocket, a Pandora's box he'd opened without knowing the cost. Liam was family, a truth that both anchored and unmoored him. Aisha, with her unwavering kindness, was no mere bystander. She was the keeper of Nathan's legacy, a role Caleb envied and resented. The weight of that truth pressed on him, a silent vow forming in his chest. He would uncover the story behind those blue eyes, no matter what it revealed about his brother, his mother, or himself. For now the city hummed below, oblivious to the storm brewing in Caleb Thornton's heart, a storm that would soon test the foundations of everything he held dear. The Brooklyn diner buzzed with the clatter of plates and the hum of late-morning chatter, a stark contrast to the storm raging in Caleb Thornton's chest. The 34-year-old tech millionaire sat in a worn vinyl booth, his blonde hair catching the dim light, his blue eyes sharp but shadowed with unrest. The DNA results, a 99.9% match confirming Liam as Nathan's son, burned in his pocket like a live coal. Caleb had driven straight from his Manhattan office to this modest diner where Aisha Carter worked part-time when not on flights. Her radiant presence at the cemetery, her brown skin glowing, wavy black hair cascading, and brown eyes sparkling with quiet strength, had haunted him. Now he needed answers, but the weight of his own suspicion made his clean-shaven jaw tighten. Aisha moved behind the counter, her navy blazer swapped for a simple white apron, her hair shimmering as it caught the sunlight streaming through the diner's windows. Despite the long shift, her smile radiated warmth, a kindness that seemed to lift the room's weary air. Customers, some casting sidelong glances at her, were met with her unwavering positivity, a defiance of the subtle slights Caleb noticed but couldn't yet name. He watched her pour coffee, her grace unshaken, and felt a pang of guilt for the confrontation to come. The boy, Liam, wasn't here, a fact that both relieved and frustrated him. Caleb's fingers drummed the table, his tailored navy sweater, a stark contrast to the diner's faded charm. "Aisha," he called, his voice low but firm, motioning to the booth. Her brown eyes widened, a flicker of wariness crossing her face, but she nodded, wiping her hands on her apron and gliding over with a poise that belied her exhaustion. "We need to talk," Caleb said, his tone edged with the steel of a man used to commanding answers. Aisha slid into the seat opposite, her gaze steady, though her hands betrayed a slight tremble as they folded on the table. The diner's noise faded, the world narrowing to the space between them. "Liam is Nathan's blood," Caleb began, his blue eyes boring into hers, the DNA report a silent accusation in his mind. "You knew, didn't you? Why didn't you tell me?" His voice cracked, not with anger, but with a raw vulnerability he hadn't expected. Aisha's lips parted, her eyes glistening, but her resolve held firm. "I didn't know you," she said softly, her voice a melody of sincerity. "I only knew Nathan's wish, to keep Liam safe." Her words carried a weight that stirred Caleb's doubt, but his years of corporate battles kept his guard up. She leaned forward, her wavy hair brushing her shoulders, and began her story. Rachel, Liam's mother, had been Nathan's fiancée, a black woman from a working-class family, radiant like Aisha, but worn down by life's hardships. Nathan had loved her fiercely, but their mother, Eleanor, had seen Rachel as a stain on the Thornton legacy. When Rachel became pregnant, Eleanor's threats, financial ruin, social exile, forced her to flee. Nathan, heartbroken, died in the plane crash 6 months later, never knowing Liam. Rachel, battling illness, raised Liam alone until cancer claimed her 2 years ago. In her final days, she'd entrusted Liam to Aisha, her best friend, with a whispered plea to protect him. Aisha's voice trembled as she spoke of Rachel's sacrifice, her brown eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I promised her," she said, her hands clenching. "Liam's all I have left of her." Caleb's heart twisted, caught between awe at her loyalty and a stubborn skepticism honed by years of betrayal in boardrooms. "This sounds like a story to exploit our name," he snapped, his tone colder than he intended. He pulled a checkbook from his pocket, scribbling $200,000 with a steady hand. "Take this and step aside. It's more than you'll ever earn here." Aisha's laugh was sharp, cutting through the diner's hum, her eyes blazing with a fire that made Caleb flinch. "I don't sell children," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "And I won't sell the last piece of Rachel I have." She stood, her apron rustling, and walked away, leaving the unsigned check on the table. Caleb stared at it, a bitter taste in his mouth. Her refusal wasn't just defiance. It was a mirror, reflecting his own emptiness. He'd built an empire, but what did he know of love, of sacrifice? The diner's warmth seemed to mock him now, Aisha's radiant energy lingering like a challenge. He watched her return to work, her smile unwavering as she served a rude customer, her kindness a quiet rebellion against their sneers. Caleb's blue eyes softened, his suspicion warring with a growing respect. She wasn't the opportunist he'd feared. She was a guardian, fierce in her love for Liam. Yet the Thornton name demanded proof, not stories. His mother's voice echoed in his mind, Eleanor's icy pragmatism warning against trust. Had she known about Liam? The question gnawed at him, a splinter of doubt about the woman who'd shaped his world. Caleb rose, his navy sweater creasing as he adjusted his stance. The check lay abandoned, a symbol of his misjudgment. Aisha's story had cracked his certainty, but not his resolve. He needed more than her words. more than her radiant defiance. As he stepped into the Brooklyn sunlight, his broad shoulders squared, he vowed to dig deeper, to uncover the truth behind Rachel's exile and Nathan's silence. Liam's blue eyes, so like his brother's, were a call he couldn't ignore. Aisha's strength, her unshakable goodness, had planted a seed of doubt in his heart, not just about her, but about the legacy he'd sworn to protect. The diner's bell jingled as he left, a faint echo of the battle within him, a battle between doubt and the faint stirrings of something new. Hope. The city skyline glittered beyond the towering windows of Caleb Thornton's Manhattan penthouse, a cold constellation of ambition that once defined him. At 34, the tech millionaire stood alone, his blonde hair disheveled, his blue eyes staring blankly at the unsigned $200,000 check on his desk, a relic of his failed attempt to buy Aisha Carter's silence. The Brooklyn diner confrontation had left him shaken. Her radiant defiance and fierce loyalty to Liam had pierced the armor of his skepticism. Aisha's story, Rachel's exile, Nathan's hidden love, and Liam's existence as their son had lodged in his heart, a splinter of truth he couldn't extract. The DNA results confirmed Liam was Nathan's, but Caleb's mind churned with questions about his mother, Eleanor, whose icy control had shaped their family. Had she known? Had she buried Nathan's secret? Caleb's clean-shaven jaw tightened, his navy sweater creasing as he paced the polished hardwood floor. Aisha's brown eyes, shimmering with resolve, haunted him, her voice echoing, "I don't sell children." Her refusal wasn't just rejection. It was a mirror, exposing the hollowness of his wealth. He'd built an empire, but what did he know of family? Nathan's blue eyes, mirrored in Liam's, were a silent accusation, urging Caleb to dig deeper. The Thornton legacy, once his pride, now felt like a house of lies, and Eleanor, with her calculated ruthlessness, loomed as its architect. His fingers traced the edge of his desk, a restless habit, until they brushed a hidden panel, a secret compartment Nathan had shown him years ago, a relic of their boyhood trust. With a click, the panel sprang open, revealing a weathered envelope in Nathan's elegant script, "For Caleb, only in case of need." His heart pounded, a drumbeat of dread and anticipation. He tore it open, the paper crackling like a gunshot in the silence. Nathan's words spilled out, unsteady but resolute. "If you find Rachel or our child, don't let Mother destroy them as she did me." The words hit like a physical blow, Caleb's blue eyes widening as his handsome face paled. Nathan had known Eleanor's wrath, had feared it for Rachel and their unborn child. The letter trembled in his hands, a testament to a brother he'd failed to protect, a truth he'd been too blind to see. Guilt surged, hot and suffocating, mingling with a fury he hadn't felt since Nathan's death. Caleb sank into his chair, his broad shoulders slumping under the weight of betrayal. Eleanor's face flashed in his mind, her silver hair, her cold gray eyes, her voice commanding loyalty to the Thornton name. Had she orchestrated Rachel's exile? Had she known about Liam? The questions clawed at him, unraveling the trust he'd placed in her. He needed proof, not just Nathan's words. His years of navigating corporate espionage lent him a calculated edge. He dialed a number, his voice low as he summoned Marcus Reed, a private investigator with a reputation for unearthing secrets others buried. "Find everything on Rachel Davis," Caleb said, his tone steely, "and look into Nathan's plane crash. I want the truth." The next evening, Caleb met Marcus in a dimly lit cafe in Hell's Kitchen, the clink of cups a faint backdrop to their hushed exchange. Marcus, a wiry man with sharp eyes, slid a folder across the table. "Rachel was forced out," he said, his voice low. "Eleanor paid her family to disappear, threatened to ruin them. Medical records show Rachel's cancer diagnosis came years later, after Nathan's death." Caleb's fingers tightened on the folder, his blue eyes scanning documents that confirmed Aisha's story. Rachel's poverty, her illness, her trust in Aisha to raise Liam. But the final page stopped him cold. A grainy photo of a payoff to a mechanic, dated days before Nathan's plane crash. "Suspicious," Marcus muttered. The crash wasn't clean. Caleb's heart thudded, his mind reeling. The crash that stole Nathan, The brother who'd dreamed of a life beyond wealth might have been sabotage. Eleanor's ruthlessness, once a source of pride, now felt like a knife in his chest. He imagined Nathan's final moments, alone, betrayed, and a wave of grief crashed over him, raw and unrelenting. Yet Aisha's face intruded, her radiant brown skin, her wavy hair, her kindness defying the world's cruelty. She wasn't a threat. She was a guardian, carrying Nathan's legacy in Liam's blue eyes. Caleb's anger at her faded, replaced by a grudging admiration. But doubt lingered. The Thornton name demanded certainty, and Nathan's letter wasn't enough. He returned to his penthouse, the folder heavy in his hands. The city lights blurred as he stood by the window, his navy sweater a soft contrast to the hardness in his jaw. Aisha's warmth, her refusal to bend under his offer, challenged everything he'd been taught about power. He saw Liam's eyes again, a mirror of Nathan's, and felt a pull, not just to protect, but to understand. Had Nathan loved Rachel as fiercely as Aisha claimed? Had Eleanor's ambition cost Caleb his brother? The questions were a storm, tearing at the foundations of his world. Caleb's fingers clenched the letter, Nathan's words a lifeline and a curse. Don't let Mother destroy them. He vowed to honor that plea, but the path ahead was treacherous. Eleanor's shadow loomed, her power a threat he couldn't underestimate. Aisha and Liam were no longer just a mystery. They were a call to action, a chance to reclaim the brother he'd lost. As dawn crept over Manhattan, Caleb stood resolute, his blue eyes burning with purpose. The truth about Rachel's exile and Nathan's death was out there, and he would find it, no matter the cost to the Thornton Empire or to himself. The faint hum of Queens evening traffic seeped through the cracked window of Aisha Carter's modest apartment, where the scent of brewing coffee mingled with the warmth of a lived-in home. Caleb Thornton stood awkwardly in the cramped living room, his tall frame dwarfing the worn furniture, his blonde hair catching the soft glow of a single lamp. At 34, the tech millionaire felt out of place, his navy sweater a stark contrast to the tailored suits of his Manhattan world. Nathan's letter, its words seared into his mind, "Don't let Mother destroy them," had propelled him here, to the heart of Aisha's life, where Liam's blue eyes and her radiant kindness challenged his every instinct. The investigators' report, confirming Rachel's exile and hinting at sabotage in Nathan's plane crash, had shaken him, but it was Aisha's fierce loyalty to Liam that kept him awake, a beacon in his storm of doubt. Aisha moved with quiet grace, her wavy black hair shimmering as she set a mug on the coffee table, her brown eyes wary but warm. At 27, her resilience shone through the fatigue of her double shifts as a flight attendant and diner worker, her radiant brown skin glowing despite the weight of her burdens. She'd agreed to let Caleb visit, but her posture, arms crossed, smile cautious, betrayed her fear of his intentions. Liam, sprawled on the floor with a chessboard, looked up, his blue eyes so like Nathan's, sparkling with curiosity. "Want to play, Mr. Caleb?" he asked, his voice a soft echo of innocence that pierced Caleb's guarded heart. Caleb hesitated, his blue eyes softening as he knelt beside the boy. Chess had been Nathan's game, a shared ritual of their youth, and now it was a bridge to this child he barely knew. "Sure, Liam," he said, his voice low, a tremor of emotion betraying his usual control. As they moved pawns and knights, Caleb's mind drifted to Nathan's laughter, the way his brother had always seen the world differently, freer, kinder. Liam's small hands fumbled a bishop, and Caleb's gentle correction drew a giggle, a sound that stirred a warmth he hadn't felt in years. Isha watched from the couch, her apron discarded, her expression softening, though her eyes held a guarded hope. The moment felt fragile, a fleeting truce in the tension that simmered between them. Caleb's confrontation at the diner, his offer of $200,000 to take Liam, lingered like a ghost. Isha's refusal had humbled him, her radiant strength exposing the emptiness of his wealth. Yet her fear was palpable, fear that Caleb, with his Thornton power, might still try to claim Liam. "You're good with him," she said quietly, her voice a mix of gratitude and caution. Caleb's heart twisted, caught between admiration and the weight of her distrust. "I'm trying," he replied, his blue eyes meeting hers, raw with a vulnerability he couldn't mask. Nathan would have wanted this. Aisha's lips parted, her brown eyes glistening as she nodded, but the air thickened with unspoken words. She rose, busying herself with dishes, her wavy hair swaying as if to shield her from the intensity of the moment. Caleb followed, offering to help, his broad shoulders brushing against the narrow kitchen counter. As they washed plates side by side, he glimpsed her life, bills stacked on the table, a worn photo of Rachel and Liam pinned to the fridge. Aisha's kindness, her ability to smile despite the world's slights, was a quiet rebellion that made Caleb feel small. He wanted to protect her, to protect Liam, but the Thornton name felt like a chain, binding him to Eleanor's shadow. The doorbell's sharp ring shattered the quiet. Aisha's face paled as she opened it, revealing a suited courier with a sealed envelope. Caleb's jaw tightened as she read the letter, her hands trembling. "It's from your mother," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "She demands you cut ties with Liam to save Thornton Tech's reputation." Caleb's blue eyes darkened, a surge of anger rising at Eleanor's audacity. The investigator's findings, her payoffs, her threats to Rachel, flashed in his mind, fueling a betrayal he couldn't ignore. "She doesn't get to decide this," he said, his voice low, steely with resolve. Isha's gaze searched his, her warmth tinged with fear. "Prove it," she challenged, her voice soft but sharp, a plea wrapped in defiance. Caleb's heart pounded, her words cutting deeper than he expected. He saw Nathan in her strength, in Liam's laughter, and felt a pull to be more than the cold CEO he'd become. "I will," he vowed, his hand brushing hers as he took the letter, crumpling it in his fist. Aisha pulled back, her brown eyes flickering with doubt, but she nodded, a fragile trust forming. They returned to Liam, who was setting up another chess game, oblivious to the storm brewing. Caleb sat, guiding Liam's moves, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. Isha watched, her wavy hair catching the lamplight, her smile faint but genuine. As night fell, Caleb lingered, reluctant to leave the warmth of this makeshift family. Isha's resilience, her ability to radiate hope despite prejudice, stirred something in him, a longing for connection he'd buried since Nathan's death. But Eleanor's letter was a reminder of the battle ahead, a threat to the bond he was beginning to cherish. He stood to leave, his navy sweater rumpled, his blue eyes meeting Aisha's. "I'm not here to take him," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm here to learn what Nathan wanted for him." Aisha's gaze softened, but her silence spoke volumes, a rift born of fear, not doubt. Caleb stepped into the cool queen's night, the weight of her challenge echoing in his chest, a call to prove he could be more than the Thornton name, for Liam, for Aisha, and for the brother he'd lost. The New York City courtroom buzzed with a tense undercurrent, its high windows casting stark beams of morning light across polished oak benches. Caleb Thornton sat rigid in the front row, his blonde hair neatly combed, his blue eyes burning with a resolve that belied the storm within. At 34, the tech millionaire had traded his navy sweater for a crisp charcoal suit, a nod to the gravity of the day, but the weight of Nathan's letter, "Don't let mother destroy them," pressed heavier than any boardroom deal. Beside him, Isha Carter clutched a worn leather folder, her radiant brown skin glowing despite the strain etched into her face. Her wavy black hair shimmered, pulled back loosely, her brown eyes glistening with a mix of fear and defiance. At 27, her gentle strength, that radiant kindness that lifted others, was a beacon in the room's cold scrutiny. Liam, in a small navy suit, his brown hair combed, clung to her hand, his blue eyes wide with confusion, a silent plea for the family he'd come to know. The air crackled with anticipation as Eleanor Thornton's legal assault loomed. Her silver hair gleamed from the defendant's table, her gray eyes icy, her presence a chilling reminder of the power she wielded. The board of Thornton Tech, pressured by her, had escalated their demands, painting Liam's existence as a scandal that threatened their empire. The judge, a stern woman with graying temples, called the session to order, her gavel echoing like a thunderclap. Caleb's heart pounded, his clean-shaven jaw tight as Eleanor's lawyer, a sleek man in a pinstripe suit, rose. His voice was smooth, venomous, branding Aisha as an opportunist. A black flight attendant with no means, preying on the Thornton name. The gallery murmured, and Caleb's fists clenched, his blue eyes darkening with a fury he struggled to contain. Aisha's shoulders stiffened, her brown eyes flickering with hurt, but her radiant warmth held firm. She squeezed Liam's hand, her smile faint but unwavering, a quiet rebellion against the lawyer's words. Caleb saw the slights she'd endured, whispers in the diner, glances on flights, and marveled at her strength. He wanted to shield her, to erase the pain, but his own complicity in the Thornton legacy gnawed at him. Had he enabled Eleanor's ruthlessness by staying silent? The thought was a knife, twisting deeper as the lawyer flashed headlines on a screen. Thornton Heir Scandal Rocks Empire. Aisha's gaze dropped, her hands trembling, and Caleb felt a surge of guilt, his resolve hardening to stand by her. The tide turned when Aisha's lawyer, Denise, a poised black woman with a commanding presence, stepped forward. Her sharp eyes surveyed the room as she presented Nathan's letter, its trembling script a raw plea. Protect Rachel and our child from mother's wrath. The gallery hushed, the words a dagger to Eleanor's claim. Denise followed with Rachel's medical records, yellowed but potent, detailing her cancer battle and her dying wish for Aisha to raise Liam. Caleb's throat tightened, his blue eyes glistening as he remembered Nathan's laughter, now forever tied to this boy. Aisha's hand brushed his, a fleeting gesture of gratitude, but her eyes held fear, a fear that this courtroom could tear Liam away. Then came the moment that silenced the room. Liam was called to the stand, his small suit slightly askew, his blue eyes locking on Aisha. His voice quivered as he spoke, each word a blade. Aisha's my mommy. She's all I know. The gallery gasped, and Caleb's heart swelled, pride and pain mingling as he saw Nathan in the boy's courage. He rose, his suit straining as he adjusted his stance, requesting to testify. The judge nodded, and Caleb stepped forward, his voice steady despite the stakes. If this court trusts me to lead a billion-dollar empire, he said, his blue eyes sweeping the room, then hear this. Aisha is the finest mother I've ever seen. Liam thrives because of her, and I stand with them. His words hung heavy, a betrayal of the board that had once been his lifeline. Eleanor's lawyer countered with financial records, arguing Aisha's modest means disqualified her. Denise's rebuttal was swift, presenting Caleb's affidavit, his voluntary relinquishment of custody claims, and offering only to be a supportive uncle. Aisha's brown eyes met his, a spark of hope breaking through her fear, and Caleb felt a warmth he hadn't known since Nathan's death. The judge deliberated, the clock ticking like a heartbeat, the gallery holding its breath. Finally, the gavel fell. Aisha Carter is hereby recognized as Liam's legal guardian, the judge intoned, her voice final. Relief washed over Aisha, her wavy hair swaying as she hugged Liam, tears streaking her radiant face. Caleb smiled, his handsome features softening, but the victory was bittersweet. Eleanor's glare from the defendant's table promised retribution, her gray eyes cold as steel. Outside, the media swarmed, cameras flashing as Aisha shielded Liam, her white blouse creased from the ordeal. Caleb flanked them, his suit a beacon of support, as Denise joined with a triumphant nod. Aisha's hand brushed his again, her brown eyes warm with gratitude, but a shadow lingered. Eleanor's vow to appeal, a threat to the fragile bond they'd forged. Caleb's heart pounded, his resolve unshaken. But the weight of his mother's power pressed on him. Aisha's radiant strength, Liam's trusting gaze were anchors in the storm, but Caleb knew this victory was only a pause in a war for the truth Nathan had died for. The golden hues of late afternoon bathed the Hudson Valley Lake House, its wooden beams and wide windows reflecting a serenity that felt hard-won. Caleb Thornton stood on the porch, his blonde hair ruffling in the gentle breeze, his blue eyes tracing the shimmering lake. At 34, the former tech millionaire had traded his Manhattan penthouse for this modest sanctuary, his navy sweater a symbol of a life reshaped by truth. The courtroom victory that secured Aisha Carter's guardianship of Liam had been a battle against his mother Eleanor's relentless pursuit, but the scars of that fight lingered in Caleb's heart. Nathan's letter, Rachel's sacrifice, and Liam's blue eyes, so like his brother's, had unraveled his world, forging a new purpose rooted in love, not legacy. Inside, laughter spilled from the living room, where Liam's 7th birthday party unfolded. Aisha moved among the guests, her radiant brown skin glowing, her wavy black hair cascading freely, a soft green dress replacing her usual apron or blazer. At 27, her gentle strength and unshakable kindness had transformed the lake house into a home, her warmth defying the prejudice she'd faced. Liam, his brown hair tousled, darted through the room in a blue hoodie, his blue eyes sparkling as he clutched a violin. A gift from Caleb, a nod to Nathan's passion. The melody he played, halting but heartfelt, filled the space, drawing smiles from Denise, Aisha's lawyer friend, and a few neighbors who'd become their chosen family. Caleb watched from the doorway, his broad shoulders relaxed, a rare smile softening his handsome features. Liam's laughter stirred memories of Nathan, but the pain was softer now, woven into a tapestry of hope. Aisha caught his gaze, her brown eyes warm with a gratitude that made his chest ache. The courtroom had tested their bond, Eleanor's icy glare a reminder of the empire Caleb had abandoned. He'd severed ties with Thornton Tech, launching a non-profit to support single parents, a quiet rebellion against his mother's legacy. Aisha, too, had founded the Rachel and Nathan Foundation, channeling her resilience into helping women like her late friend. The Thornton fortune, rightfully Liam's, had funded this lake house, a bittersweet victory over Eleanor's deceit. As the party wound down, Caleb found Aisha by the lake, her green dress swaying in the evening breeze, her hair catching the sunset's glow. Liam played nearby, chasing fireflies, his giggles a melody of peace. "He's happy," Aisha said, her voice steady but tinged with emotion, her eyes glistening as she watched the boy. Caleb nodded, stepping closer, his blue eyes intense. "Because of you," he replied, his voice low, raw with a truth he'd come to cherish. Aisha's smile faltered, her brown eyes searching his, a flicker of the fear she'd carried since their first encounter. The diner confrontation, his initial doubt, lingered like a shadow, but Caleb's presence here, his choice to stay, had narrowed that rift. The air thickened with unspoken words, the lake reflecting their quiet intimacy. Caleb's heart pounded, his years of solitude, of never knowing love, suddenly heavy. Aisha's radiant kindness, her ability to shine despite the world's slights, had awakened something in him, a longing he could no longer deny. He knelt before her, his navy sweater brushing the grass, his handsome face earnest. "I didn't come to take Liam," he said, his voice breaking. "I came to ask for a family. Aisha, will you marry me?" Her brown eyes welled with tears, her hand trembling as she touched his cheek. "I think Rachel would agree," she whispered, nodding as tears fell, her smile radiant despite the weight of her past. They embraced, the lake a mirror to their shared future, Liam's laughter a bridge between them. The next morning, Liam insisted on visiting Nathan's grave, a short drive away. Caleb and Aisha followed, her green dress a soft contrast to his navy sweater. Liam, his blue hoodie flapping, placed a drawing on the stone. 3 figures under a sun labeled, "Uncle Caleb, Mommy Aisha, and me." "For Daddy," he said, his blue eyes bright, and Caleb's throat tightened, a silent vow to honor Nathan's memory. Aisha's hand found his, her warmth grounding him as they stood in the cemetery, once a place of sorrow, now touched by peace. Back at the lake house, Liam practiced his violin on the porch, the melody drifting over the water, a sound Nathan would have loved. Aisha watched from the kitchen window, her hair shimmering, a framed certificate from her night school business course behind her, a symbol of her quiet strength. Caleb joined her, his blue eyes reflecting pride. "You've given him everything," he said, his voice soft. She smiled, her brown eyes warm. "We have." The moment was a snapshot of their new life, built on the ruins of betrayal. Eleanor's shadow, her imprisonment after the courtroom revelations, had faded, but Caleb knew her influence lingered in the world he'd left behind. Yet as Liam ran inside, his blue eyes alight, calling, "Can I play for you, Mommy?" Aisha knelt, her dress pooling around her, and replied, "Of course, my love." glancing at Caleb with a trust that felt like victory. The melody rose, a bridge between past and present, a family redefined by love. This lake house, born from the ashes of the Thornton Empire, stood as proof that justice and unity could rewrite a legacy. Caleb, Aisha, and Liam were no longer bound by power, but by a bond forged in sacrifice, a testament to the truth Nathan had died for and the love they'd fought to build. As we close the saga of Caleb, Aisha, and Liam, their journey from a chance encounter at a grave to a family forged in love leaves a lasting echo. What moved you most about their story of redemption and resilience? Drop a comment sharing your thoughts and rate this tale from 1 to 10. Let us know how it touched your heart. Thank you for joining us on this emotional ride. Your support means everything. Until we meet again for more stories of courage and connection, stay inspired and take care.